I would like to move next to the section of national level, and I have an honor to invite Assistant Professor Dr. Nitinant Wisaweisuan, Dean of the Pridi Banomyong International College, Thammasat University, Thailand, as the moderator under the topic Internationalization Policy for Relevant Higher Education. Assistant Professor Nitinant, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and welcome to the very mid-afternoon session, which I believe that you are still awake. For this session, I'm glad that coffee will be served on your table, and hopefully that coffee and snacks will help you at least getting awake and alert for the next session. The next session is Internationalization Policy for Relevant Higher Education at National Level. I'm very pleased to be moderator in this session, and if you have stayed from morning, I think we have learned a lot from our keynote speakers this morning, that there are several issues that we have to address in order to cope with the new education landscape, particularly in the globalization that needs the connection between internationalization and also global awareness, so that the education will bring about the sustainability for our development. Certainly, this session will highlight the development of relevant policies and strategies at national level, taking cases of a number of countries. Very honored to invite the distinguished speakers from Australia, Japan, China, and Thailand, who will share their view and experiences regarding to the internationalization policy for the relevant higher education at national level. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite our distinguished speakers to the panel. The First Lady, Ms. Watinee Kharnwong, the Director, Education, Department of Education and Training, Australian Embassy, Bangkok. Professor Dr. Hiroshi Ota, who is the Professor of the Center for Global Education and Exchange at Hitotsubashi University, Japan. Third speaker, may I invite Professor Dr. Shi Jinghuan, the Chair of Academic Committee, Institute of Education, Tsinghua University, Republic of the People, Republic of China. Last but not least, of course, Ms. Lakhana Dockiao, Director, Bureau of International Cooperation Strategy, the Office of the Higher Education Commission, Ministry of Education. We have 4 speakers. What I like to do is to invite each speaker to give presentation for about 20 minutes each. And after that, I'd like to open the floor to all the audience to pose questions, comments, and of course, in the last round, I'd like to invite all speakers to wrap up as well. So, not to give any delays, may I start with the first speaker? May I invite Ms. Watinee Kharnwong, Director, Education, Department of Education and Training, Australian Embassy, Bangkok, who will give a talk on the revisiting internationalization of higher education in Australia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having me here. Thank you all the organizers and the co-organizers. Very pleased to meet the familiar faces and new friends. First of all, I would like to pass on the sincere apologies from Ms. Joanna Wood, the Education and Science Counselor from the Australian Embassy in Hanoi, who's supposed to be here to give the presentation, but due to an urgent matter, she had to go back to Hanoi yesterday. So that's why I'm here, and she sent her apologies. And it is a pleasure to be here to present on Australia's experience in higher education internationalization. I hope I'm not telling what everyone is already aware of. I hope there's something that I can deliver. This is a very expansive topic, so I will focus on giving a broad overview of the Australian higher education, and then I will discuss Australia's National Strategy for International Education 2025. Okay, let me give you a brief overview of our higher education sector. There are currently 41 Australian universities operating in Australia. 37 of them are public and 4 are private. Universities are responsible for their own academic standards and are empowered under legislation to accredit their own courses. Australia has an open higher education sector, and overseas university can open a campus on our shore. However, they must meet state and territory legislation requirements and the same quality standards as our local universities. There are around 130 accredited private providers or institutions. They range greatly in size and scope. Some are small and offer specialized courses like business design and management to a small number of students. But there are also large institutions who offer a range of more comprehensive courses to a large body of students. Courses at the Australian higher education institutions are accredited individually by Australia's qualifications agency called the Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency, or TEQSA. Australia is a global leader in education and research, continuing to attract large numbers of international students and academics. 2017 was a record year with over 600,000 international students studying in Australia across all education sectors, representing 194 nationalities, which is 13% increase in comparison with 2016. The quality of Australia's education and training system is fundamental to our attractiveness as a destination for international students. And international students in Australia study across all education sectors, from schools, English language, non-award courses, vocational education and training, and higher education. In Australia, they said we eat meat, we drink beer, and we speak English. So we have around, as you can see, as today we are focusing on higher education, we can see from the enrollment data that majority of all international students in Australia study higher education. We have around over 30,000 Thai students studying in Australia as well. To translate this into number, the higher education enrollments total around over 350,000 enrollments, followed by vocational education, non-awards, English language, and schools. And of course, global engagement is not just international students coming to Australia. Australian students are already some of the most globally mobile in the world. 1 in 5 Australian undergraduate students travel overseas as part of their degree, and 77% of these international experiences contribute to academic credit. For a country with 24.6 million citizens like Australia, I think we perform very competitively on the world stage, with half of our universities being ranked in the top 500 of global rankings. And we have the one university, Australian National University, in the top 20 worldwide. This is according to the QS World University Ranking 2018. In terms of research in Australia is conducted through a number of channels as noted here. And for example, universities, industry, public funded research agencies like the CSIRO or Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, and not-for-profit sector like the Medical Research Institute. Australia spent 31.2 billion Australian dollars on research and development in 2015 and 16, with the industry providing the largest funding of around 16.7 billion Australian dollars, followed by the Australian government 10.1 billion Australian dollars, and other sources come from university revenue, bequest donations, approximately 4.4 billion. And Australia has a high share of the world's most highly regarded research output, top 1% cited publications, ranking the 7th out of 37 OECD countries in 2015. So we perform quite very well in the research output measures. So the previous slides gave a snapshot of Australia's higher education sector. Now, turning to the benefits of internationalization, it is clear that international education is a very important sector for Australia, a very isolated country, which it brings many national and global benefits to us. Recognizing this, the Australian government established the Council for International Education in October 2016. I think this is probably the world's first Council for International Education. The role of the Council is to work with education institutes, industry, and federal, state, and territory governments to ensure the international education sector continues to play a key role in driving Australia's future economic growth, global engagement, and innovation. The Council membership includes 6 Australian government ministers with responsibilities relating to international education, as well as experienced experts and practitioners in international education. And the Council for International Education plays a key role in implementing Australia's National Strategy for International Education 2025, or we call it National Strategy for short. The National Strategy was launched in April 2016. The National Strategy outlines a number of goals under 3 key pillars: strengthening the fundamentals, making transformative partnerships, and competing globally. I'll touch on each pillar one by one. Okay, let's begin with the first pillar, strengthening the fundamentals. This pillar includes a focus on making sure students are protected, receive a quality education, and enjoy themselves when they study in Australia. In 2016, the Australian government funded a survey of over 65,000 international students studying in Australia. The survey asked about the students' experience of both studying and living in Australia. And the survey found that the reputation of Australian qualifications, safety, and security were the most important factors when deciding to study in Australia. In the higher education sector, 89% of students were satisfied or very, very satisfied with the overall experience in Australia, and 87% were satisfied with their learning experience. The Australian government also has strong legal and regulatory frameworks in place to protect international students. Australian education, public and private institutions who enroll international students must comply with the legal requirements set out in the Education Services for Overseas Students, or the ESOS Act 2000. The ESOS Act applies to the international students studying in Australia on a student visa. Australia, I guess, is among the very first country that launched the act, which is the ESOS Act, that specifically protect the international students. And we also have another scheme called the Tuition Protection Service. The Tuition Protection Service, or the TPS, is an online placement service to help students find an alternative course if they were not satisfied with the existing course that has been agreed. So if the satisfactory cost cannot be found, the TPS can pay refunds to the students if necessary. So pillar number 2 is the making transformative partnerships. This pillar includes a focus on government-to-government engagement and enhancing student and researcher mobility through qualifications frameworks, quality assurance, and qualifications recognition and scholarship opportunities. The Australian government is actively working to collaborate with foreign governments on international education issues. The Australian government Department of Education and Training, which is the department that I am working for, has an offshore offices and education counselors who are posted in a number of Australian embassies and high commissions, mostly in Asia, but also in North and South America and Europe. The counselors and the local staff work closely together to progress the implementation of the national strategy offshore, including through government-to-government engagement. For example, my office in Bangkok is located at the Australian Embassy here in Bangkok. We work closely with OHEC, with OVEC, the Vocational Education Commission, the Ministry of Education, and the Thai universities. I will now turn to student and researcher mobility, which is a key aspect of our global leadership and collaboration in education and training. Mobility is most efficiently achieved when key policy areas are working well together. In Australia, we refer to quality assurance, qualifications frameworks, and qualifications recognition as a mobility trifecta. When all three are in place, it enhances mobility, and a high level of trust can be achieved quickly. The best possible mobility outcome are achieved when these three areas of policy complement each other. But I won't have enough time to go into details of each aspect, but happy to discuss this later. Looking at the big picture, it is clear that these policy settings are fundamental to enhancing two-way student and researcher mobility. The Australian government further supports mobility through a range of programs, such as the New Colombo Plan and the Endeavour Leadership Program. The rebranded Endeavour Leadership Program provides the opportunity for Australian students and researchers to travel overseas for study, research, or professional development. Additionally, it funds international students, including students in Thailand, and researchers to come to Australia for the same purpose, thereby supporting two-way mobility. This program focuses on opportunities at the postgraduate level. The New Colombo Plan aims to lift the knowledge of the Indo-Pacific in Australia by supporting Australian undergraduates to study and undertake internships in the Indo-Pacific region, including Thailand. This year, we have around 400 NCP, or the New Colombo Plan students from Australia, studying in many Thai universities and undertake internships in the private sector. And yesterday, we just announced that there will be at least 125 Australian students coming under the New Colombo Plan to study at Thai universities across the country, and also to undertake internship, practicum, and mentorship at the private organization as well. The reason why we do this, because when it comes to studying abroad, students in Australia, in the past, they firstly thought about going to the US, UK, or Europe because of the similarity in culture, because of the language. They're not aware that Indo-Pacific, Asia, or Thailand have a lot to offer in terms of study and research and training. They thought of Thailand, for example, as a tourist destination. So the past 4 years that we have the New Colombo Plan has lifted a lot of knowledge about Asia to the Australian undergraduate students. And importantly, Australia ensures these important people-to-people links are continued and expanded once students return home. To support this, Australia has a global alumni strategy, a whole-of-government initiative to engage alumni of Australian education institutions. The Australia Global Alumni website allows alumni to connect with each other, the Australian government, and education institutions. The Australian embassies in most countries also initiated alumni activities throughout the year to support global alumni engagement strategy. And pillar number 3, to conclude, national strategy for international education competing globally. This pillar stresses that we cannot afford to be complacent when it comes to international education. The world and its skills needs are changing rapidly, and we can all agree that we need to ensure our economies and younger generations are prepared for the future. That's why events like this symposium are great opportunities to share our experiences and enhance collaboration in education and training between our countries. Okay, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you once again for me to share the experience about Australia's higher education. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Kun Watinee Kharnwong. This is very interesting presentation about Australia's education policy, and I think we have learned that what Australia is doing is not only about students' mobility, but also how to enhance the international understanding through faculty members as well as the alumni. So you can see that the integrated approach that embedded in the overall system of education can be a lesson that we can learn from. So now let's move on to the lessons or some best practice that we can learn from Japan. We have the second speaker. May I invite Professor Dr. Hiroshi Ota, who is a professor of the Center for Global Education and Exchange at Hitotsubashi University, Japan, please.
Thank you for the chair. Thank you for introducing me. My name is Hiroshi Ota, Hitotsubashi University. I'm going to talk about Japanese internationalization. And today, those Japanese participants here knows I'm not really good at time management once I come to the podium. So usually I don't prepare the script, but I have to keep the time. I prepared today's the paper. Okay, where's the? Can I see the? Okay, this one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, this way. Yes. At the beginning, I just want to show some basic statistics. And Japanese university, higher education institution, and more than 70%, nearly 80% are private. And this is also in the number of students, as equally nearly 80% of students go to private university. If you want to have this slide, I can give you the last slide. I showed my email address. Please email me. Take the pictures. Take my face. And this is a tuition. It doesn't show properly the N level. And the national university uniform tuition regardless of the discipline. Private university differentiate the tuition depending on the discipline. And this is international students statistic, including language study students. 40% of students are from China. That used to be nearly 70%, now going down. And the more students coming from Vietnam and Nepal. And this is only for international students enrolled at the higher education institution in Japan. It's being stagnated in until some years ago. Now it's backing up and going up again. Interestingly, the recent trends of the or changes in international students. Look at this compared with two statistics, 2011 and then 2017. Postgraduate students or undergraduate, including associate degree programs, those people basically enrolled in a higher education institution, used to be 70% of international students. Now it's less than half. More than half of the students are enrolled at the vocational training school or Japanese language schools. So I'm going to talk about more than 300,000 international students, 300,000 international student policy. Expect more highly skilled workers, skilled migration approach. But in reality, those people who are in a vocational training school, Japanese language school, not all of them, but unethical schools, they attract so many students basically for their work. They want to work. And they're more, when you come to Tokyo, Osaka, then go to convenience store and restaurants and bars, you can see so many international students working there. We're facing a severe labor shortage. And then also, this is outbound mobility, study abroad. My generation, the Japanese study abroad, for all the generation, study abroad for a degree as a norm, standard. Now, that number is going down. And then the more and the short-term study abroad students increasing. So now is, we have very interesting statistics. One side in the long term is decreasing, but another one is increasing the short term. And the 62% of those study abroad students, while they are in the university, and they just for only less than 1 month, 60% study abroad. So, okay, from now, so the Japanese government's revitalization strategy 2014 said that Japan needs to attract highly skilled international students and Japanese students study abroad experience in order to boost the country's global competitiveness and to revitalize the economy. The internationalization of Japanese university has been driven by competitive funding project provided by Ministry of Education. 300,000 international student plan from 2008 onwards, the skilled migration approach. So promotion of post-graduation employment in Japan is emphasized to respond to its domestic demographic changes. As I said, we face a severe labor shortage. And then also top global university project from 2014, comprehensive university reform and internationalization responding to globalization. And economically and politically driven policy, these policy trend. And the recent policy trend is tied in with improving Japanese economy and the political climate. More specifically, it is for Japanese graduates to work for Japanese companies that will do the business around the world and become more successful. More focus shifting from inbound to the outbound. So the reason is that as a result of the great shock that came with the pointing out of the Japanese people's poor English ability, low TOEFL average score, and of the decreasing number of Japanese going to study abroad for a degree since 2004. Sometimes we say the Japanese young people are becoming more inward looking. It turned into the argument that globalization of Japanese students should be prioritized. The Ministry of Education turned their rudder toward the direction of policies for encouraging Japanese students to study abroad and developing Japanese students into global human capital. By reference to the Times Higher Education World University Ranking, based on the low ratio of international students and the faculty members in Japanese leading universities, it was argued that the internationalization of Japanese higher education was lagging behind, and so the international outlook of Japanese universities should be raised. Okay. And then this is shows those series of the Japanese government policy initiatives for internationalization. Inward mobility, outbound mobility, or two-way mobility. Yes, mobility, student mobility is really centered. Then this is Go Global Japan. This ended last year. This is more outbound mobility program. And then when you see that numerical target, it says Global 30. Before that, Global 30 inbound mobility program, they have a numerical target. That was numerical target, but not many, not so many. And then this is the current project, government project. Inter-university exchange project, they focus on regional or country-specific area every year from 2011. So the more exchange program, inbound, outbound, they also set a numerical target. And then right-hand side, there's the money is going to the students, international student or study abroad student. Left-hand side, the money goes to university to develop programs. Okay, this is a top global university project. University reform through internationalization. Since 2014, the Japanese Education Ministry has been carrying out the top global university project to provide prioritized support to those universities. They are leading the internationalization of Japan's education by launching new programs to encourage and deepen interactions and partnership with the world's top universities, reforming personnel and educational system, enhancing educational system to help students develop the ability to act globally, and accelerating other globalization initiatives. Under the top global university project, 13 universities were selected as type A, top type, so-called, universities that are to conduct world-leading education and research to be world-class universities. 24 universities were selected as type B, global attraction type, universities that are leading the institution-wide internationalization of Japanese higher education. And Hitotsubashi University, unfortunately, are not selected. At the beginning, we are very unhappy, but now we are so happy. Okay, I'm going to explain the reason. Okay. The both type A and type B of university were required to set numerical targets for those around 20 KPIs when they applied for TGU project. Ministry of Education evaluates progress toward these targets at the periodic intervals. Compared to previous government funding project, as I say, Global 30 or Go Global Japan, TGU is characterized by its demand for comprehensive initiatives and the goals for university internationalization. Why did the Education Ministry start to build many KPIs into their funding project? I assume the reason is that the government believed that these KPIs can increase the transparency and fulfill accountability for a large proportion of funds allocated to a small number of universities. As I showed in the statistic, we have 780 universities, so only a handful of universities receive such a large grant. However, the problem is that achieving the KPIs has often become a purpose or goal in itself at the selected university. Eventually, the administrative side tends to end up counting all the seemingly relevant numbers for each numerical target, so that it becomes a kind of numbers game of KPIs. Numerical targets should be considered as a means or guided to achieving the vision and the goals of the funding project as well as of the university's internationalization effort. In reality, however, achieving numerical targets becomes the first priority. The internationalization effort of those selected universities focus on the micromanagement of the numerical targets in order to cope with the periodic checkups by Ministry of Education and to continue to receive funding throughout the designated period. Every time those Ministry of Education checks up coming in, the result is also publicized, and if it's not doing good, the funding level is going down. Competitive funding, the issues caused by numerical targets. I'm talking about more about those numerical targets. Competitive funding projects require applicant university to set all the numerical targets at the application stage, which causes another problem. On one hand, some universities tend to set unreasonable numbers in the hope of being selected for a competitive funding project. It can make university larger than life. It's really a high standard, a high target. On the other hand, many universities give up on applying for a funding project since it is too difficult for them to set all the numerical targets, which appears as a harsh requirements due to their limited institutional capacity for internationalization. The distribution of competitive funds based on the principle of selection and the concentration is creating competition within a limited scope, while denying a large number of universities the opportunity to participate and making a small number of winners stronger as a result. The winner institution then often struggle to achieve the too ambitious target which they themselves set, and their students also suffer, since the numerical targets, for instance, TOEFL score, the number of study abroad students, do not take into account the reality of students' abilities. So it means when you apply for and got it, it's good, but it's really struggle with those numbers. And then also if you cannot do it, just give up the fund. Nevertheless, universities would still like to be the winner of the competition, since successful selection for the competitive funding project can be used as an effective recruitment tool in the domestic student market, by arguing that they are among a few institutions selected as a model or hallmark of the global university by Ministry of Education. Media coverage boosts this effect still further. So even just selected, it's a beginning, but the media or general public sees they are winner, they're really doing good. That's also the problem. Another problem, for the university which have the high possibility of selection, for instance, Waseda, Keio, or University of Tokyo, there is a fear that if they don't apply, it might give the impression that they are neglecting their duties towards internationalization. So sometimes I feel very so sad, including my university. We always have to feel we have to apply for the funding because they're national university. Implications. So raising the university's position in the World University Ranking on one hand, and improving the quality of internationalization and international education on the other hand, I think they are two separate matters that do not seem directly connected. Position in ranking is a result of enhanced quality of education and research. Thus, enhancing the quality of education and research through internationalization should come first. Raising the position of university in the ranking is an end result, and it should not be a purpose or goal in itself. Looking at the application and requirements, including KPI, those government funding projects, selection criteria, and so on, there doesn't appear to be much freedom for university to devise their own unique way of the internationalization. So it's really, everything's kind of set by the government. That's the issue. Implications continues. The government competitive funding project for internationalization have intensified the domestic competition among universities. That's very sure. However, it's not certain that they have increased the international competitiveness and the compatibility of Japanese higher education as a whole. So inward-facing internationalization, focusing on the domestic competition, as I said before, particularly means to prevail in the domestic student market. So very ironic things is an internationalization project, but basically focusing on very Japanese model, focusing on the inward-facing model. And then often the same old university tend to be selected for the funding project. They are former Imperial University, National University, Comprehensive Research University, or long-established large-scale private universities. It seems that these funding projects for raising the international competitiveness of Japanese university are still being guided by old-fashioned convoy system. That means the government forms a group of selected university and micromanaged competition between institutions. So those many universities, majority of universities feel kind of left out. Is that they are not really part of the internationalization. In the game of obtaining a funding project, universities have become major players, not the students. So the students is not really centered, as I said, because those numerical targets on the application stage, they put very high. Sometimes they ignore the reality. And the problem, sometimes I talk to those my partner universities in the US or Australia or UK. They said, why Japanese university, they really want to have very complicated project or program. Even English level is so low, they want to say, oh, we need an internship, we need a job shadowing, we need some academic subject taught in English. Reality, their English level is so low, so can't carry on. So that's the issue. And the set of the, in the game of the funding project, university have become major players, as I said, not student. A set of KPI is used as a device to control university. Autonomy and the deregulation are more important for university internationalization. So internationalization, even if you have your own strategy, own plan, but once the funding project comes in, you put aside, just apply for the funding project. So that's, you lose kind of ownership of internationalization. Ultimately, the promotion of internationalization has tendency towards over-reliance of government funding, and the current situation is a far cry from autonomous university internationalization. It's a problem. Japan is not like an English-speaking country. We cannot make money through internationalization. Internationalization, we spend so much money. In Japanese university, often called internationalization like a bag or a parasite eating resource all the time. They never produce money. So that's the problem. So we rely on so much in the funding from the government. Poisoned sweet, this is also, we often say competitive funding projects are now increasingly perceived as poisoned sweets, especially after Ministry of Education cut TGU, top global university budget, by 30% this year. So it looks like a sweet, looks nice. You eat, first bite, sweet, great, so much money. But you eat, you become the kind of slave to the government. You must be obedient to the government. Because government requirement coming regardless of budget cut. You have to do it. So Hitotsubashi, we are loser at the beginning. Now, it's good actually. We are thinking about our own way internationalization. We ask the alumni, we ask the community to help us, really becoming unique. It's very ironic, but it's true. Implications, third, and Japanese universities have always been protected by the language barrier of Japanese, and also Japan is an island country. Small island country, but large mindset, have not seen subject to the true global competition. Therefore, despite many government initiatives, the internationalization of Japanese higher education has not been understood as a high priority issue at the institutional level, with many examples of superficial or partial add on the international aspect, and has been even criticized as unable to contribute to the transformative change at the university. The internationalization is not just for transaction, just not how many students, how many international students study abroad. It's more transformative model is becoming standard. But the Japanese university have been protected, as I said, and also internationalization, from my point of view, revisit and reconstruct your university or university to respond to globalization by your own unique way. There's no one model of internationalization that fits all. Okay? In the internationalization currently required of Japanese higher education, this is, can be divided into several elements from my point of view. These could be started as an incremental raising of universities' international applicability and the compatibility, and then openness, flexibility, connectivity, mobility, and then diversity. If one can be achieved, this will lead to the number 2. And if the number 2 can be achieved, it will lead to the number 3. In this way, moving ahead with 1 through 6 as a chain reaction will result in the achievement of internationalization at the institutional level. However, there is a condition for this model. Both the deregulation and the broad expansion of university autonomy by the government are essential in order to facilitate this chain reaction model of the internationalization. Thank you very much. I just don't want to the black paint of Japanese internationalization, but this is a researcher's kind of job to share the critical viewpoint of the policy study. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor O. A number of long-term supports by any agencies. Finally, it becomes the university's job that you have to make yourself clear in terms of both policies and also implementation. Congratulations to Hitotsubashi University anyway. And so now let's move on to the third. Right. The third speaker that we are going to listen and learn from her experience is Professor Dr. Shi Jinghuan. She is chair of Academic Committee, Institute of Education, Tsinghua University, People's Republic of China. So, ladies and gentlemen, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really a good opportunity for me to participate in this very good conference and discussing the hot topic of internationalization. When Professor Pranu discussed with me in Hong Kong about this topic, I'm thinking about focusing on the the international awareness and the capacity building in China, which recent years we are quite focused on. But China is such a big country, and higher education system is such a diverse system considering the implementation. So although still talking about China's policy, I want to use Tsinghua's case to show how the policy is implemented. Especially you have to put the China's development and Tsinghua's development in the much broader background, which is the global development, the globalization and internationalization. And knowledge-based society made the knowledge-driven growth model even severe. And the world village and global citizen, those words really means for the education. And higher education becomes more crucial for any country, especially for developing countries. And when we think about this, these words comes out, internationalization, the same words, but different countries, they discuss it in a totally different situation. For a lot of developing countries, the internationalization means brain drain. China for quite a number of years, quite a number of students, much more students going out. And developed countries, especially with the very good higher education system, they play the brain game. And of course, we want the brain circulation. It's more, multi ways of exchange and cooperation. And in this way, you have to really make building a better capacity of higher education system and increase the qualities of graduate education. In this way, you can be comparable. Putting this in the Asian rising, is really a phenomenon globally. So with the rapid social-economic development, Asian has played a major role in increasing and widening access to university and colleges. This is the Human Development Index, the increase, the status. And also, Asian takes a big share of higher education institutions by continents. So that's why Asian representing very promising futures. So we should really know that, and maybe the years later, Asian will present some good practices for the world. And talking about China, the higher education before the 1998 almost stable. The college students only take less than 7% of cohort population. And then start from 99 is almost tripled from the number. And the rate, the enrollment rate of higher education now representing almost the 46% of cohort population. So this big increasing of numbers of college students has been noticed by the global scholars. For example, William Kirby from Harvard University, he said China is building the fastest growing system, both in quality and as well as in quantity. China higher education is entering the time of investment, growth, experimentation, and internationalization. So large is not equivalent to strong. China has the largest higher education system, the largest higher education population. But, so talking about quality, of course, we understand the big problem. So right now, China is trying to build a strong and innovative higher education system, focusing on quality increasing. Right now, quality and the system development and capacity building are the topic we're focusing on. But considering the big country, which we have over 2,600 higher education institutions, among them, half of them, 1,300 something, are 4 years undergraduate education. So the quality improving strategy has been the two major methods. One is the general approach. The other is targeted approach. So targeted approach means the key university building project. If you're familiar with, you may have heard about the 211 project, which starts from the early 90s, and also 985 project start from late 90s. And then most recently, the double world-class construction project. Right now, we have 42 universities under this project, which means receiving special support from the government, and 95 universities building the world-class disciplinary area. So this kind of targeted approach shows that limited resources, you have to really build the competitive system with the worldwide. So you have to really limit it to certain targeted universities. So its strategy really works. So if you see the ranking, although this morning we already discussed a lot about ranking. Ranking is not the only way to judge the quality of higher education. But now the market, the government and the society, they use this ranking to easily show, the university's quality. We don't like it inside, as insiders, but we have to deal with. So at least the ranking provide us a kind of benchmarking to see in certain fields, which comparable fields, what standard you are reaching. So Tsinghua University, this purple one, and Beijing University, the red one, we are all making progress. QS, Times, and US News, and even the most hard, the really very hard one, Shanghai Jiaotong's, the Tsinghua has already reaching to the 48 and Beida 71. So this shows the progress. And look at the Asian universities. Also, we are narrowing the gap just from the ranking perspective. So this kind of development shows the China and Asian countries all make great efforts in developing their top universities. And in the recent, we call the AUA, Asian University Alliance, which 15 universities represented 14 countries and regions participants. And there are some kind of the world university and some regional flagship university and some just a national the flagship university. But doesn't matter. These all represent the most important agencies in their own countries. Now they are trying to work together. The word global university is a word which just the recent years we use that. Levin, the former president of Yale University, used these words as the future directions of Yale University in the 300 anniversaries of Yale's. And the economic, the journal articles talk about the Global Research University, 2005, depicting the research model of top research university in a global academic market system. And as the previous speaker, Ota, yes, talk about Japanese government start the project supporting the super global universities. So those words is not really reach the consensus what the global university mean, just from the three cases. But we all understand that global university means making the global contributions and having the global impacts. And now, if we move to the individual universities, the development, we seen that we are under the outside those factors really impact the university inside reforms. So we have to really put the university development in a more complicated context. And take Tsinghua as an example. We established as an institute preparing schools for the students to study abroad. And then 20th, we start to officially named as the National Tsinghua University. And in 1949, it becoming a polytechnic from a comprehensive university because of these political changes. And then start from 80s, start again, to become a comprehensive research intensive universities. And then in the 90s, we start building the world-class university. So these history really show no universities will out of the background and develop yourself. You have to really live and rely on rooted in the country's culture. So the pictures also show, the integrations of Chinese cultural, Chinese tradition with the modern Western influence. And also, the modern technology and, the market economy. So just last week, the MIT's board members having their board member meeting in Tsinghua campus. Why? Because they think Tsinghua's science park representing a good model of entrepreneurial university. So they want to really make a deep, interview and our president talking about the double world-class construction. Every people have their own explanation. And our president mentioned about leadership, uniqueness, contribution, and impacts. That's the most important issues for the world-class means. And excellence should be in the disciplinary development, faculty and staff development, student success, and university governance. And also, outcome, we should really measure education, research, social engagement, global contributions. And right now, the team, which I headed, are working on the indicator development for the double world-class construction project. We try to use those fields as the things which we want to assess. And 3-in-1 model in Tsinghua University means for the students' cultivations, we nicely use these nice Chinese characters. They pronounce the same, zhi, 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 but representing 3 characters pronounced the same, but meaning totally different. Knowledge, zhi, zhi means wisdom, skill and wisdom, and zhi means value and aspiration. You know, so these Chinese characters really work nicely the whole person development. And among these, the global competence is a big issue. So in Tsinghua, we issued the University Global Strategy in 2015, focused on the capacity building of students, not only the agencies or the organizations, but the students. So those are the 3 major parts for the global competence. The 3 domains, cognitive, interpersonal, and intrapersonal aspect. So it's not only a goal which we are going to achieve, but also a practice. Also, we try to make the students learn from their domestic learning, classroom learning, extracurriculum learning, and also overseas learning. So right now, the most recent, actually now is the number increasing. For undergraduate students, 50% of them have the opportunity to study abroad, and master's 25, and doctor more than 60%, all have the opportunities during these 3 or 4 years study abroad. And we have a kind of personal assessed design for the students to let them to assess themselves whether their global competence is qualified or not. It's an online tool. Students can take the exam online, but the exam not only tell you your score, but also tell you which perspective you should improve. So it's a self-online learning system. And from another perspective is that if you want to really make your university internationalized, you have to have enough international students and also excellent international students. So 2015, Tsinghua launched the Schwarzman College, which this one is a new college inside, and also representing the most attractive agencies for international top university students. The target select 200, but these recent years, since it just the start, is 120 and gradually reached 2,000. 45 from United States, 20 from China, and the rest from other parts of the world. And focusing on 3 fields, 1-year master degree: international relations, economy, and public policies. No engineering, no natural science, all social sciences. So the goal to cultivate future leaders with the global visions, understand Chinese culture and society geared to the promoting the world peace is not by designing just by Chinese, by Tsinghua, but the Schwarzman himself want the future leaders understand China because China representing both the past and the future, the human challenges. Okay, and the most recent, we call the GIX, which under the support of Microsoft, Tsinghua University and University of Washington create the Global Innovation Exchange Institute, focusing on interdisciplinary development, also a master degree program. And next week, the first group of students receiving their degree. So our presidents and also I'm invited as a degree committee representatives to participate their graduations. And the most recent, the regional collaborations in Asia. And this one, the pictures taken last year when the AUA, the Asian University Alliance, officially established. And this is the most recent, just last month. And Tsinghua established a Southeast Asian centers in Bali. Is the first one in Southeast Asian countries to promote the Tsinghua's regional engagement in Asian. So if we think why these kind of regional collaborations has been strengthened, because we share the same vision. When our team, which we just published, the Asian Higher Education Outlook, later a team from these 15 universities will work together, annually publish the Asian Higher Education Report. And we do the searching for the 15 universities, and you see from their mission statement and a lot of similarities, excellence, international, world class, and so we share the same vision. And a lot of topics can be developed under the AUA's umbrellas. For example, last month we have this, we call the postgraduate education among these 15 universities. So I think there are different platforms for us to strengthening the internationalizations. What we should do is that to take good use of these opportunities and to strengthen the regional and international cooperations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Jinghuan. At least we know the word Ju, right? I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce the right sound, but it's amazing that the three sounds of the one word represents the key elements of education, which are skills, knowledge, and values, which I think we should all learn Chinese from now, in addition to English. Thank you very much for your kind sharing experience and also policies that Tsinghua University has implemented. And I think there are several lessons that we can learn. In particular, how to do for the improving quality, not simply having larger number of quantity in terms of the international education. I do appreciate your presentation, and thank you very much once again. Now let's move on to the case of Thailand. So we are very honored to have Ms. Lakhana Dockiao, who is Director of Bureau of International Cooperation Strategy, Office of Higher Education Commission, Ministry of Education, Thailand, who will share about the internationalization of higher education, the case of Thailand. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Good afternoon. I am here today to share with you our efforts, our commitment, and our future for internationalization of Thai higher education. I will start my talk on our effort, Engage Me. When I say engage me, there are two meanings. The first one is engage me. We look within ourselves. We look within our Office of the Higher Education first to be very clear and to be more focused before we moving forward with the regular self-check. And the other meaning, we would like, we consider that internationalization or IZN is not the only the responsibility of the university only, but it's also the responsibility of the OHEC, the national authority, to be more conscious on. So engage me is to be engaged. Don't forget that OHEC is here to provide support and to provide, to facilitate the IZN process here in Thailand. And I would like to start in the year 1991. The Ministry of University Affairs, or OHEC nowadays, start the first seminar on internationalization with the cooperation with Fulbright Thailand. And since then, OHEC has retained our priority on IZN policy by partnering with our partner, international and regional organizations such as Fulbright Thailand, EU delegation to Thailand, and Simeo Righthead and UNESCO. We also have encouraged our university to reflect and relearn what IZN mean and how it could be contribute to the higher education as a whole. And this is one of our efforts to move forward to provide the mechanism, the tool, and the platform for the Thai university to make use of it and to demonstrate its integration through various means in order to set the scene and synthesize it to sharpen its direction and indicator for meaningful of IZN. You can see that Darren J. McDermott has on the screen. She is the EU delegation expert to work with OHEC on the IZN to provide the tool for the assessment for the IZN. And now I would like to move to our commitment. Another effort of the OHEC that I would like to mention here is the formulation of the strategic plan on the development of IZN. The strategy to move on, we focus on development of the IZN policy and plan to support the increased international competence and intercultural understanding and strengthen partnership, not just only public and private sector, but all stakeholders, including industry, which will play a very key role in the internationalization. And the last one, we aim for brand building. It doesn't mean the commercial brand, but we would like to make higher education to be more visible in the international arena. And our core value, we focus mainly on the future. So we mention about future-oriented learning. And not only for the university, this framework is for OHEC ourselves to be the guideline for us to work on IZN. And if the university would like to use, it depends on, and they can use it to suit on their context. And the second one is we would like to work as a team. So teamwork is high on this agenda. And the last one that I have mentioned earlier, that stakeholder engagement is needed. After decades of working on internationalization in Thai higher education, we would like to have the same language to talk about IZN. So we defined IZN in the OHEC context that is the development process through integrated university mission for staff and students at all levels to adapt themselves successfully in the VUCA world and lead their life meaningfully with cultural grace. This is the definition that we have during we work with the university and our stakeholder. You can see that process is the priority in driving IZN to achieve the desirable goal. And the other one is to adapt not only university, but also the people who are engaged in this process is needed to be considered that if you don't adjust themselves, they will not accommodate to the change in the VUCA world. And not only the academic side, but also the soft side of our life, how we can live in the changing world. So we focus on living meaningfully with cultural grace. This is the definition of the IZN that we have working on. So our future, no matter what, where you are, what are you doing, you are connected to everything in this world very easily and all the time. This is the survey that we have recently sent to some university, and this is the response on the IZN activity project. You can see that the scale of the satisfaction is around 7 and 8. It means that the Thai university are very well aware of the importance of IZN, and the activity and the project that they have implemented might be in line with this policy and the priority. The other one is that we ask about the quality and the diversity of activity and project to support IZN. You could see that 51% found that the activity and project available at each university have the quality enough and diversified enough to cover the IZN at their institution. But the main focus is on student development. It means that student mobility is the priority at each university. And the other one is curriculum development, and 14% is on staff development. And when looking at our own self, BIG is the Bureau of International Cooperation Strategy under the OHEC. OHEC is one of the education agency under the Ministry of Education. So let's see what we see ourselves. We see that IZN, in our perspective, 35% thinking of standard, quality, and recognition of higher education, and the other 31% looking at competencies of the student at all levels and the mindset towards the future of education. The other focus on process management. The other is the mix of the rest. When we talk about the role of the BICS in promoting IZN, both universities and our staff at BICS say the same, that they would like OHEC to be the leader to move IZN forward. Not only the leader, but the cooperation that OHEC has been made with our partner around the world might be very beneficial to the Thai university. So matchmaker is another role that they need to see from the policy maker like OHEC. Not only matchmaker and leader, facilitator is needed. We would like to work as a friend, as a partner, not only with the one who is at the policy level and just give the policy, not provide anything for them. You can see from this slide that if OHEC through BICS be the matchmaker to move our university to be visible in the international platform, the thing that we would like to see is not just only visibility, but recognition with quality and standard of IZN is always high on the agenda. Not only this one, not only visibility, recognition, quality, and standard, but we must have the same mutual understanding to talk about the same thing and moving it forward. This is not new for all of you, that these are the key elements that IZN are needed: leadership, alignment, commitment, communication, engagement. But those elements will lead on the internationalization of higher education in Thailand and beyond. Because if we are thinking of internationalization as student mobility of our people, just only a handful of students who have exposed to the experience overseas. And how about for the rest? That is a mass of our students in the country. So internationalization is our future of the Thai higher education institution, as well as OHEC, which is the policy maker would like to see. And I would like to end my talk on this diagram, which is developed by Pitip Okunporntip, former director of Fulbright Thailand. You could see that no matter what happened, no matter what you are doing and have been doing right now, IZN will be linking and integrating, like Pitip always say that, integration at all levels and at every step of you of the IZN, of what you have been done, which will lead to sustainability, competitiveness of the higher education. I would like to stop. While we are racing for ranking, there is a fine line between racing for ranking and embracing internationalization. But I would like to see that how can we make internationalization or IZN meaningful and simple for us all. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Right, thank you very much, Ms. Lakhana Dockiao, who shared the experience and also policies from the OHEC Thailand. We have learned lessons from 4 countries: Australia, Japan, China, and Thailand. And I think we have seen a number of diversities, particularly from the backgrounds of the universities themselves. So now it's a great opportunity for all of us, at least to post questions, answers, and also give comments. We have plenty of time at the moment. It's not 4 o'clock yet, and I think we have time until 4:45. So 45 minutes that we are having, and it's time for all of you to enjoy this questions and comments and comments sessions, unless the organizers ask me to stop. Now the floor opens, and please feel free to raise any questions and comments. If not at the moment, to me, I'm quite interesting, of course, from the 4 presentations, and I'd like to pose maybe my personal questions to Australia first. Of course, alphabet start from A, right? So let me start from Australia, because it is a great honor for me as well. When I had lunch and I sat next to Ms. Nicole, and we talked about the experience that a number of Australian students have difficulties in getting credits transferred, and it could be one obstacle that they do not leave the country, or maybe they are quite reluctant to go abroad, and that could make mobility programs become perhaps less flexible and might be less successful. I'd like to hear from Kun Watinee that in addition to this credit transfer system that is quite difficult, I personally heard that there are also some attitudes that Australian students are not quite willing to leave the country as well. And also there are a number of issues that may make a mobility program becoming less flexible. And in your experience, and also from the national strategies that you have introduced to us, how are you dealing with the students' attitudes, in particular when they are leaving the country and spending their time in foreign countries, and then finally making the internationalization policy successful?
Thank you for the question, Ajahn Nitinant. And if that you, Professor Nicole, if you have any additional answers, just please feel free to add. It's a very interesting question, and I hope I can answer some of that in terms of the policy level. I think, yes, there are some students who have lack of knowledge and awareness of the people outside Australia. Although Australia is one of the most multicultural countries in the world, like we have about 26% of our population were born overseas, and 20% of our people have at least one parent born overseas, and almost 250 languages were spoken in Australia. We still face some problems. I met a young researcher who came to Thailand for the first time 2 years ago to take internship at Nanotech. He was from one of the university in South Australia. He said it was the first time he didn't, not even going overseas, but it was the first time for him in 25 years that he left South Australia. So I think we have some problems about that. So that's why we, at the school level, we were aware of this. The Australian students are mixed with international students all the time, and they try to, the government at school level, they introduced a lot of policies and strategies for the Australian students to be more aware of the other countries, other culture, to be multicultural awareness. For example, we have the English second language programs taught in Australian schools, Chinese, Japanese, Indonesian, Vietnamese languages now are taught a lot in Australian schools, and we also have activities like Australian weeks, not Australian, like Asian weeks, European weeks, something like that. Like a lot of activities were introduced in the school level. But for the university level, we also have the, as I mentioned before, we are aware of the lack of knowledge, especially for the Australian students to know about the our neighbors like Indo-Pacific. Asia is very close, like we are closest to Indonesia, close to Thailand, but they don't know much about us. They don't know much, they don't know that we can offer courses or research opportunities. So we have the New Colombo Plan, and to encourage Australian students to come overseas. And we also have the Endeavour Mobility Program. This is the funding from the Australian government to encourage students to go overseas to study and conduct research, and also take some internship as well. And at the university level, most universities have the study abroad programs to encourage students to study at overseas universities as part of their degree component. Professor Nicole, you have any additional, yes, additional views? Any microphone?
Okay, that's coming.
Or you can
Microphone
use
is coming.
Thank you, thank you. I think actually that we talk a lot about higher education. We're not talking very much about high school. And I think that there are two issues. One is that we need to do more to encourage students, particularly in the last 3 years of high school, to have international experiences. So by the time they come to universities and we present them with all these wonderful opportunities to go on exchange, the idea is not a new one, and it's one that it's easier for them to seize. The second problem is that we build global credit recognition arrangements. So technically, it should be easy for students to move across jurisdictions around the world. But then at an institutional level, we build university degrees, especially undergraduate degrees, that are full of prerequisites. And there is no room or flexibility in the institutional degree to allow the student to take advantage of all these global opportunities. So it's a chicken and an egg, or a catch-22, where we have global frameworks, and then at an institutional level we actually negate the very flexibility we are seeking.
Thank you. So are there any questions, any comments here? Yes, please.
Well, sorry for grabbing that mic again. I mean, I think Thailand is in a very interesting position, and as we are in Thailand, I mean, Thailand is in the kind of middle ground where it both attracts a lot of, I mean, not on a big scale, but it attracts international students from the region, and it also has a number of outgoing students. But it seems to be a one-way street in both cases. So Thailand is attracting a lot of students from China, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. I tried to do my homework. That's the top 5. But Thai students want to go to the US, UK, Australia, Japan, and Egypt, being number 5. So there's always this imbalance. So it seems to be very difficult to set up really exchange programs if you have these, well, diverging interests of people coming to Thailand and Thais going in a different direction. Any ideas to work on that and strengthen, for instance, the regional exchange? I mean, I appreciate people who want to go to Europe. I mean, that's my business. But I mean, it would be good to have more exchange within the region.
So maybe I push the microphone to Kun Lakhana.
I think the number that you have got is is not the exchange student, but is the student coming to Thailand for their degree. And for the exchange of student, OHEC with collaboration with Thai University are working on having the balanced mobility. We work under the with the SIMO Right on the AIMS program, ASEAN International Mobility for Students. We try to have a balance between in our region, in the ASEAN country, as well as Japan and Korea are always are included in this program. This is what the one of the efforts that OHEC has been made along with the Thai University. They are always aware of the imbalance of the student. I would like to give you one example. Under the AIMS program, we started with 3 countries, in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. And since the first day that we agreed to implement this program, we stated that the balanced mobility are needed. So like Dr. Chantavit mentioned this morning, that 1-to-1, if you send one, you have to receive one. And we hold on this concept until now. But once Japan coming in to be one of the member country under the AIMS program, it could see very clearly that the number of the students going to Japan first, for example, from the Thai university, just only 5 to 5 in ASEAN, but once Japan can come, 28 students or 30 students going to Japan. But this is, sometimes we can control it, but sometimes we cannot control it because we are now globally connected and the students have their own way, have their own decision to be made. Thank you.
I think the issue is how to encourage students to go to other places apart from the top 5 destinations that you mentioned. It just draw me back to the presentation that Professor Ota showed us. There is one line of the project that Hitotsubashi is going to pursue, which is the projects on Russia and India, that I show that in a long term that you are trying to have the more of students going on exchange to the Russia and India. I think this is an example that you open up new destinations to students. Can you share with us how you see, for example, Russia and India, the opportunities? Sure. And please kindly give us some lessons for Thailand as well, for example, or other countries, how we can learn from you to at least encourage students to other places like Russia and India.
That's also kind of similar. Japanese students basically want to go to English-speaking countries and then followed by European countries. But as I mentioned in my presentation, the business is going to expand more Asia. Asia is so important, and also Russia, India too. So why the government use this so-called, it is titled Inter-University Exchange Project. This one. Every year, different focus. But when you look back, ASEAN, so many times, ASEAN. So from Japanese point of view, ASEAN is so important. And we also encourage students to go study abroad twice or 3 times. Because as I said in my presentation, study abroad becoming shorter means study abroad for credit, not the degree. So it means more chance to go. So maybe first US or UK improve the English and then coming to the Asia. The ASEAN is such an important. So that's why we repeat those funding project, exchange program with ASEAN countries.
So yes, please, Dr. Ramyet, do you have any? Okay, microphone coming please.
Actually, I just thought about what you have mentioned because I'm part of the process, being at Thai universities and being under the OHEC as well. I think they have tried to do many things. One of the, not just only the funding, the AIMS project is the platform and also the funding mechanisms that encourage the students to go within the ASEAN countries. It's not easy, and I have to admit. I mean, if you are having the scholarship programs to go to Europe or to go to the US, you almost don't really have to do any PR. The student will just come to you. But if it is the scholarship to go to the ASEAN countries or even the GMS to make it closer, it needs a lot of efforts. But it did happen. I mean, it's eventually throughout the years, many years that we have done it. But we have so many supporting programs that we have to do it on the universities level as well. For example, we want to promote the culture of these countries within our universities so that when they are actually coming at our home, they get to know the culture of those countries in our home ground. And I think it's good in terms of internationalization itself. So that's one. Second, we have other kinds of programs to support it as well. And for the Office of Higher Education Commissions, in the last 3 years or 4, they started to have the cooperation strategy with our neighboring countries. And that strategy has been endorsed by the government. What it means is that it puts the extra efforts for us to work with our neighboring countries in different levels. So each year they are spending a lot of money trying to get us engaged more with our neighboring countries. Let's take, for example, our university got a pilot project to work with the Myanmar universities. And we have a university consortium. We have just visited Mahidol University as well, trying to get the presidents of 7 Thai presidents and also 7 Myanmar presidents of the universities to work together. And this is sort of like a long-term plan as well. So I think you are right in saying that, for Thailand, we struggle a little bit to get our students to go within our region, but we never short of efforts. We are trying very hard to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I think internationalization policy at the national level is actually beyond mobility, beyond student exchange. But I really appreciate your comments that particularly for Thai students who have been going to US, UK, as a primary destinations. In my experience, we have sent about 10 students to India every year, simply because we put it as a part of the curriculum. So it's a compulsory part. So that makes them go there, but they learn finally. So I think it's not only scholarship. It's not only about the, the preferences towards particular destination, but also how we put the information to our students, how they can learn about the emerging countries or any parts of the world that are interesting or the current challenges, in global society. We have more questions and comments, please.
Yeah, just to respond to George's question, I think one of the perspectives that I'd like to reflect is from the perspective of regionalization, because from the experience of Europe, you have come up with the Bologna process, and you have, you can trace back to like 200 or 300 years ago that you have got the Erasmus in place. So it's like for the European Union, the integration has become a major part in enforcing mobility within the region. I think that is the difference between Europe and also in ASEAN. We don't have that kind of mechanism in place, but I really appreciate the ASEAN attempts in order to promote more intra-regional mobility. And I think that AIMS is the example of such endeavor. But again, like our colleague from Mafalung mentioned earlier, I think it depends on the initiatives within the institutions themselves as well. For her and for Mafalung and also for Thammasat, I believe that they have already mentioned about some initiatives. For us at Mahidol, what we are doing is that we know that it's really difficult to get them out within the region. So we have to we really have to beg sometimes. Please go, please go. And then what we have come up with in terms of initiative is that we ask them to link it up with something like global citizenship, like Jihae mentioned earlier from UNESCO, that at the end of the day, you have to come up with something that not only incurs them from the institutional part, but also inspire them. Like you have to come up with a campaign which they could come up with a group of students, and then I ask them to go with their friends in ASEAN countries, and they come up with their experiential learning designed by themselves. So I think it really depends on both the support from the government and also from the institutions as well.
May I add one thing?
Yes.
Not only those government policies and initiatives, but Japanese case also institutional effort to strengthen the tie with ASEAN countries. Maybe you know, in Bangkok, more than 40 Japanese universities have offices in this Bangkok area. And the offices are often situated in their partner universities' campus.
So means not only student mobility, but staff and faculty mobility between Thai university and Japanese university is increasing. And then more people are aware of that the Bangkok is kind of center of those regionalization ASEAN. And the students' point of view, maybe Japanese students understand European EU effort, their regionalization, but they are not so aware of those regionalization Southeast Asian countries. So this is really good for the Japanese student to understand. Maybe challenge for the European universities, geographical distance probably. For Japanese, is Japan to Thai is so close, so we can go back and forth easily. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. And I think it's, yes, we have another question, comments over there.
Thank you very much. The previous discussion about the regional, function of the regional arena is really, really interesting, especially ASEAN one. And I believe that there is two quite different type of the conceptual discussions there. One is that the market regulation type discussion, and maybe Australia is a very successful case of the, maybe it is so simplified, but the market-oriented, but actually the government is working quite well for the regulatory body. The other one is that much more like a platform network type discussion, that the university can serve as a platform to be inclusive for the very dynamic and also diversified the stakeholders. So I think it is really, really clear that the higher education institution, the university cannot live without the support or collaboration with the society and the market or the government. So I think it is really, really important to have a good relationship with the stakeholder. And maybe the Japanese case is not really good. But then, for example, our university, Tohoku University, also talks so much about how to rank up. But at the same time, we are also, within the university, we are also discussing a lot about how to serve as the kind of the platform for the different the people from the different country, or how to make a network with the other country. So my question is that, especially for the Australian colleague and the Chinese colleague, that so the Chinese case will be again a successful case of the very, very strong public investment or the social investment to the university to strengthen your university. And the Australian case is, as I said, that one of the success case in market model. So those two countries, at least compared with the ASEAN regional framework, the regional kind of the function as a platform is not so visible from the outside. So could I say something about what kind of efforts or what kind of discussions are there to make university as a kind of a platform or the open space for the different culture or the different knowledge? So that's my question.
So, Professor Jinghuan, question.
Yeah, I think you're quite right talking about these exchanges and international cooperations. It's not just choices, student choices and the university choices. Sometimes it's more than that. So that's why also I think it's a long way to go to really make the university a platform to cultivate, to produce and promoting these kind of cooperations. And in China, I think right now a lot of these international inward coming students are quite from Asian countries, Pakistan, the Indians, Lanka, on those kind of students, a lot of applications. And also when the policy of one road, the Silk One Road, One Belt policy comes out, and both the government and universities are quite promoting this one belt and one road cooperations. So I think there are great potentials in the future for the universities to not only have the connections historically established. For example, Tsinghua as a preparing school for sending Chinese students study abroad, especially United States. We have quite a long history of having this American partnership. But also, you know, students are familiar with American system and top universities, and they are welcome there, and a lot of students naturally will go there. So, but also the political issues intervent. And this year, I think I heard quite a number of Tsinghua applicants for the American top universities because of the visa issue has been rejected. And then the European top universities are happy for that. They said, oh, if they don't go to the United States, they will go to the European and Japanese, the top universities. But I think now more and more students, by the university's lead, because we want to encourage the students not only go to the United States and Europe, but also the developing countries. We specially designed the, we call the South-South cooperation and developing countries capacity building. And students will working team in the summer, in the social, we call the service learning and social experience learning, go in those kind of countries. So it's definitely the university can play the roles to encourage students diverse. Yes.
Thank you. So how about Australia?
Can I have the question again, please?
Sorry, my question is, in case of Australia, at least compared with ASEAN, it is not so visible from outsider that the universities are trying to be active as a kind of platform for the encounter or the dialogue of the different culture or the different citizenship or something like that. And so that if there is some very good example of the such a function or the activities in Australian universities, I appreciate if you could tell.
Like to have students from outside, like overseas students in Australia, right?
So,
yes.
Okay, it is not exactly, but so that,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have the like Australia is, as you already mentioned, that we are very multicultural and we do well in the market, but it's not only about having students studying and gaining and earning money, right? It's also about exchanging the research, innovative, and it's also a lot about the people-to-people links. It's been embedded in the strategies of all universities that we would like to have the Australian, Asians or in overseas students in the universities, in every universities, but a limited number of each nationality just to make a balance as well. And we have, as I said before, we have the national strategy for international education that to make sure that we doing the right thing on strengthening the fundamentals and also making the transformative partnerships, and we are competitive in the market. And we also have the Australian International Education 2025 to make the market development roadmap sustainable, not just having a lot of overseas students, but we try to maintain the quality as well as the quantity. And as I mentioned before, the global alumni engagement is also one of the schemes that make it sustainable, because we see alumni as a very valuable asset. When they come back, they talk about Australia, or when the Australians are here for the first time in Thailand, they went back, they told their colleagues on how wonderful Thailand is, and then the next year a lot of colleagues apply to come to Thailand, for example. So a few strategies for this. So I hope I have answered you some questions, some answers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more, the two last comments. One, Darren first, and then ladies over there.
Sorry,
yes,
if I can, thank you very much. If I can just interject on this and maybe try and add to the question, because I think what it boils down to is the readability or the visibility of clear policy and strategy, and how that is enacted and how that is imparted. For Australia, it is very clear to have it's very easy to have a very clear government policy that is enacted by the institutions, that is borne out through the various governments and institutional initiatives. I think ASEAN countries have this, and there is a stated aim of the ASEAN Secretariat of making their citizens feel more a part of the community, or as citizens of the ASEAN community. But it's sometimes hard to see how that strategy, or how that policy is enacted. I think it has something to do with what Dr. Supachai would have referred to as the analogy between the EU and ASEAN, whereas the EU is an orchestra, ASEAN is a jazz band, and it's very difficult to be prescriptive or definitive about what the overall policy should be for the regional entity. So I think the onus does fall on ASEAN members, but also the Secretariat, to get together and define what is our approach to engendering a sense of regional community or regional citizenship, and then how is that enacted? How do we bring that forth? How do we generate the excitement amongst ASEAN students to understand their own community, the ASEAN community, better? And there just seems to be a lot of initiatives going on, but maybe not a very clear voice from the Secretariat and the various ministries and the various entities that are responsible for this. It's a viewpoint, it's not a criticism, but it's a little bit busy at the moment is what I would think.
Basically, we are going to be chair of the ASEAN next year, right? Right, thank you, Darren. And can I move to our lady or the lady?
Yeah, Paul Sin from Eastern Asia University, Thailand. I just want to add some comment on student mobility. Regarding student mobility, there is another issue worth considering, which I think it's upon law and regulations, especially in educational accreditation, that may become one of the obstacles of the student mobility. Many students think twice before they move to, or maybe before they enter to any university in different country, because after graduate, what would they get? Would they get diploma, or would they will they get a degree that will be accredited by their government or not? That will be another issue worth considering.
That's a comment, not a question, right?
That's a comment.
All right, thank you.
It may be turned to a question to every country. What do you do, the government, what do they do about institution accreditation?
would like to start first. The accreditation of the institution as a role of the encouraging or as a mechanism for the internationalization. Maybe from China.
I think in China there is agencies which really take care of this as a governmental, but also try to become an independent international education commission to most of the universities abroad they have a name list, which that means if you receive the degree from those universities, in China the MOE, the Ministry of Education, they recognize their degree. So for degree education, it's no problem. If the institution is on that list, your degree is recognized. But I think the more complicated issue is not the degree, but 1 semester or 1 year. So you take some credits, from the other universities. So that depends on the universities. So some of the universities, they recognize, if as a sister universities exchange, so they recognize the credits, the credit they learned abroad can be added with their domestic credit. But some of the universities, they don't recognize that. Some students, they complained about, they take 1 semester in another university, but the credits won't be recognized. So that means this 1 semester, what they get is rich experience, but not the academic accreditation. So I think in Tsinghua that happens, especially the universities which are not on the top or those kind of position. They recognize the credit will not be recognized by the department and the colleges. So students will learn harder next semester to get more credit to finish the undergraduate. So I think that's the issues depends on the universities.
So I think every country shares similar scheme of the accreditation, that there are at least national agencies that take care of the accreditation. But in terms of credit transfers, of course, it depends on the university guidelines. So it's based on the university to university basis. So I think we have a very constructive discussion and also a very fruitful presentation that we learned from our 4 speakers. If you continue for tomorrow session, you'll learn more about institutional level. In particular, when we look at the session tomorrow, that will be for more institutional level. So if you'd like to learn more about credit transfer or any kind of accreditation, please stay on for tomorrow as well. But for me, my job is to conclude this session. So allow me to take a minute to thank all the speakers. Thanks Kun Watinee Kharnwong from Australian Embassy, Bangkok. Thanks Professor Hiroshi Ota from Hitotsubashi University, Japan. And also Professor Jinghuan from Tsinghua University, People Republic of China. And Ms. Lakhana Dockiao from Thailand. Thank you very much.